Welcome back to World Series News. The story I've got for you today is yet another to blow the lid off the internet and everyone else who's paying attention. What am I talking about? This time it's to do with currency and a brand new metal-backed currency that is waiting in the wings as a retaliation against what's happening in relation to Russia and Ukraine. At the moment, we've got the Western world supporting the Ukraine at the exact same time that we have 42% of the world aligned completely differently in what is known as a BRICS organization that involves Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, who have in the past planned to release their own currency that would be either silver or gold backed as a reply or a retaliation to the US dollar. What becomes even more interesting is the backstory. And what we're learning today is that Australia has some very dubious situations going on with its gold reserves. At the same time, we're learning that Canada doesn't even have any. Let's get into this story and then see what's happening in relation to Russia, in relation to India and China as to how they will do business in this period of Russia-Ukraine conflict. A video appeared recently on Senator Jared Rennick's website where he questioned bankers in the Senate committee specifically about the idea that some of Australia's gold reserves, currently and always held in the Bank of England, not even held on Australian soil, had it been detected that there were duplicate serial numbers in the audit, meaning that at least one of those two bars must be counterfeit. Rennick spoke with the banker and he didn't seem to be that concerned about what was going on, despite the fact of the introduction where Rennick explained that where Deutsche Bank had to pay a massive settlement involved in price fixing around gold. And furthermore, JP Morgan was ordered to pay $920 million for its role in price fixing in relation to metals trading. Let's play the clip now. And when we return, we're going to go to Canada and have a look at what former Harper Minister politician Maxime Bernier has got to say about what's going on in Canada. You will be shocked.
Thank you, Senator Patrick. Senator Rennick.
Hi guys, how are you going? And just to confirm, I am speaking with bankers and not meteorologists and scientists.
Yes.
Academics. Okay, thank you. Is the RBA aware that the Deutsche Bank had to settle a price-fixing litigation and basically it had to be settled because the plaintiffs accused both Deutsche Bank, the Bank of Nova Scotia, Barclays, HSBC and Societe Generale of manipulating prices of gold, gold futures and options and gold derivatives through twice-a-day meetings to set the so-called London gold fixing?
Yes, I'm aware of that, Senator.
Yep, and you're also aware that JP Morgan had to pay a $920 million fine over misconduct of market manipulation in regards to trading metals and Treasury securities?
Yes, I am, Senator.
With that in mind, I noticed that in the report that you sent me, and I appreciate you sending that through the report, that you mentioned that there was the existence of fake gold bars had been detected at the Bank of England in the past and by the presence of duplicate refiner serial numbers. Has this issue ever been raised with the Treasurer? And given the serious nature of this statement, why are we still keeping gold with the Bank of England, who have clearly failed in their custodianship of our gold?
To answer your question, no, we haven't raised it with the Treasurer.
You haven't raised it with the Treasurer?
No.
Okay, thank you. I note also that those some of those bars, a lot of those bars have been refined since 2015. Given that we haven't bought or sold any gold in 20 years, how is it that this gold's only been refined in the last 5 years, and where exactly were our gold bars prior to 2015?
So they were at the Bank of England prior to 2015, Senator. I mean, we gave you the information earlier to an earlier question of yours about how they, when bars got where. I don't quite understand your question. Sorry.
Well, why would they be refined? I mean, once a gold bar's a gold bar, why would you refine it again?
Because I think, and I'm happy to provide this a more detailed answer subsequent, but my understanding is that over time, bars don't maintain their full value. Gold dust sort of flakes off and whatever, and every once in a while the bars are refined.
Okay. Who audits the Bank of England and their reserves? And does the RBA get a copy of the audit report? And does the audit report cross-check balances and serial numbers of gold bars with other counterparties to ensure that there is no double counting of gold bars?
Sorry, do we get a copy of the Bank of England's audit?
Yeah,
the general audit, you mean?
Yeah, do you get a copy of the Bank of England's audit of its gold reserves? And a statement from their auditors saying that they've actually checked all their parties and counter statements with their serial numbers to ensure that the same serial numbers aren't being given to different counterparties, hence the duplicate counting of gold.
I'll have to come back to you on the exact answer to this, but in terms of do we get a report of their audit of their custodial services to which we provide versus the Bank of England's holding of their own reserves, I'm not so sure on the latter. On the former, I'll come back to you. Sorry, I don't think we get the latter. On the former, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I guess the reason why the latter is so important is that we need to see that the Bank of England themselves are being audited, not just our gold bars in the Bank of England, but the entire...
Are the Bank of England's audited? Yes, they're required. Just as we're audited, they're also audited. Do I get a copy of their audit report? No.
Yeah, sure. Given the information that I've revealed today, do you think that maybe we should think about bringing our gold home?
As I said to you, Senator, I'm comfortable with the arrangements as they have, as they currently stand in terms of service stuff.
Okay, and are you aware...
I'm not concerned that the Bank of England has stolen our gold, Senator, if that's what you're getting at.
Well, I mean, the presence of duplicate gold serial bar numbers, I'll be the judge of that. Given that you yourself haven't actually been over there to count it, all of it, 100% of it any time in the last 20 years, I don't think you can say that. So I'll be the judge of that. Are you aware of the value of Australia's gold exports in the 2021 financial year?
Not off the top of my head, but we have that information.
Yeah, it's $28 billion. It's our third biggest mineral export, and it basically employs, between 70 to 100,000 people. Now, given that there has been, proven gold manipulation of the gold market, it's worth pondering the fact that if prices are being constrained, let's say, for example, by 50%, that could be at $14 billion in lost revenue exports. And if you assume that profit went to the bottom line, that's another $4 billion just in company tax. So it is very important to ensure that the gold market is properly accounted for. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree.
Okay, thanks very much.
Authorised G. Rennick, LNP Chermside.
Maxime Bernier, leader of the People's Party of Canada, the former member of the Conservative Party, and he was a minister in the former Harper Government, has come out with this quote. In a tweet just recently, China and Russia have accumulated a lot of gold and are dumping their dollar assets. By escalating the Ukraine conflict and imposing financial sanctions, we are pushing them to establish an alternative global monetary system likely based on gold. Bernier continued, when this happens, the US dollar will crash and our massively indebted economies will suffer. This is a big geopolitical blunder. And by the way, Canada has no gold reserve. We won't have anything to support the Canadian dollar. Almost nobody sees this coming. Now, in Australia, we have $6 billion worth of gold reserves. Given that the price of gold has jumped up recently, it still suggests that a bar is roughly worth, those ones that you see in the treasure movies, are worth roughly these days $1 million to $1.2 million at the absolute peak. That would mean that Australia holds between 5,000 and 6,000 bars of gold as its entire gold reserves, about $6 billion worth. We are currently in government debt, almost at $1.5 trillion, so our gold reserves don't go very far. Equally, if we were going to create a currency backed by gold, we simply do not have enough gold reserves in this country. So it makes a good argument, therefore, that you would, if you were the leader of a country like Australia or Canada or even New Zealand, that you would support a digital ID and, of course, a digital currency. And a digital currency, a centralized digital currency, and we're not talking about the bitcoins of the world now, which is entirely based on a decentralized currency so that you can run your own private banking systems amongst people whom you trust or wish to trust, whereas a central banking digital currency is the opposite. And it allows for a whole lot of different features to be included. And that's why the digital ID is so important for these countries that are signing us up or want to sign us up to this situation. And one of those is the social credit score. So, for example, if you donated money via your digital currency to a protest, perhaps something out in Canberra supporting freedom rallies, and the government didn't like it, the social credit score system would allow for them to immediately switch off your money supply and confiscate said money that you had just donated to this particular cause. How do we know that's happening? That is exactly what Trudeau did in Canada to the convoy protesters. They got their people to turn off the banking and the bank account accesses of said convoy truckers and those involved. So we've seen the writing on the wall. We are now seeing more publications coming out whereby the media is reporting that Elon Musk has been asked to switch off Tesla cars using battery/electric technology in those vehicles. So this is yet another precursor as to what can be expected in a social credit score system using a digital currency and a digital ID process. It's interesting that we're learning, therefore, that countries with low gold reserves and high debt caused by COVID have very little option now but to pursue a digital ID and tell us all how wonderful it is at the same time as they have no gold reserves and are being left behind, ironically, by countries such as Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa, who are 42% of the world's population, producing 23% of the world's GDP. So there it is. A very interesting turn of events, in particularly related to what is going on in the currency world outside of what we're allowed to talk about in relation to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, here's the punchline. In my reports, I like to be able to explain and expose the facts of what are going on and also to suggest the possibility as to where we are headed. Of course, there are two sides to every story, and we don't have a hive mind here at World Series News. We're happy to look at all sides of any story. So here's the big one. If you haven't heard of it already, I'm going to bring it up. There is a term called the National Economic Security and Reformation Act, also known as NESARA. There is a second one, the Global Economic Security and Reformation Act, known as GESARA. I'm going to bring you a little bit of information now to explain the other side of what may happen if the people decide that the digital ID central bank digital currency system involving a social credit score and various other forms of compliance, including mandatory medicine, you don't like that, you may be able to see that there is another side to this story that is a whole lot better for everyone. A law was passed in the United States in March 2000 and signed into law in October of 2000. This law is called NESARA, National Economic Security and Reformation Act. All politicians and media members are apparently under a gag order to not speak of it publicly until it's officially announced. This new law will be first enacted in the United States and eventually will be rolled out across the world. The law provides that it will forgive all credit card, mortgage, student loan, and other bank debt due to illegal banking and government activities, dissolves the IRS, which is their tax system in the Internal Revenue Service in the United States, and ends all income tax. It will create flat, non-essential, new items only sales tax on food, medicine, and all used items will not be taxed. Increases benefits to senior citizens, returns constitutional law to our courts and legal matters, retrains all judges and attorneys in constitutional law, provides for new representational elections within constitutional law, monitors elections and prevents illegal activities of billionaires and special interest groups, ends the Federal Reserve System and begins a new Treasury bank system that follows constitutional law, creates new US Treasury currency backed by gold, silver, and precious metals, ending US government bankruptcy. This will initiate global economic reform, restores financial privacy, ceases all aggressive US government military action worldwide, leads to peace throughout the world, and enables the release of over 6,000 patents of suppressed technologies and enormous sums of money for humanitarian purposes. The provisions of the National Economic Security and Reformation Act have been composed by visionaries who wish to correct past wrongs against the people in the United States. It is supported and inspired by statesmen around the world as a vision for global peace, freedom, and prosperity. For many observers who are watching what's going on in the world today, we are very concerned with the way things are moving in certain directions that directly follow what we're seeing in terms of Agenda 2030. And information is appearing more and more showing us that what happened during COVID was certainly in the planning works well before, in all forms of the idea of counting, testing, providing a vaccine using this new technology, and even going as far as getting into the idea of the digital vaccine passport and the digital ID. So it's obvious, therefore, that there had to be a plan on the other side for those people who didn't like what was going on and could see what was actually happening. How this all came together appears to be under the guise of globalisation, and we know that through the World Economic Forum, and Klaus Schwab has certainly made the most of getting it out there and letting us all know through his book, The COVID-19 Great Reset, that we have seen sitting on Greg Hunt's bookshelf. And Greg Hunt worked for the World Economic Forum, and Greg Hunt is the current Minister for Health of Australia in the Federal Parliament for the Liberal Party. We've also learnt that Scott Morrison spoke before the World Economic Forum, delivering a speech that was convincing the world how important the digital ID would be leading out of this crisis that we've all gone through around the world. We've also learnt that Bill Gates, that Jacinda Ardern and Justin Trudeau are all graduates, including Angela Merkel, of the World Economic Forum, or as I like to call it, the finishing school for world leaders. How is it that you can have such a shallow gene pool that everyone comes out of the same learning process and that there would be no idea that there would be globalisation because everyone just thinks the same? It's an unbelievable turn of events that has this war coming from seemingly nowhere, despite the pressures being there for such a long time, that when we realised what was going on and that NATO was introduced, the North Atlantic Treaty, to specifically stop the Soviet Union, and when that was achieved, NATO should have finished. Incidentally, it didn't. What it did do was make all the surrounding countries of Russia join NATO. This is to be an aggressor, and something that many people have overlooked or simply don't understand or don't want to know. But it has been the setup, and this is what Bernie Eyre is talking about, a massive geopolitical event that nobody saw coming, except for Bernie Eyre himself and commentators like us around the world. It's a complicated state of affairs when you realize that we are heading into a post-COVID massive hyperinflation period that will force interest rates to skyrocket, which means the price of your home and your mortgage is going up, whether you like it or not. Is there a political solution for this in the short to medium term? Perhaps there is in Australia, and the United Australia Party will be launching a policy directly on this subject, which will benefit all Australians. So keep an eye out for that one in early April. However, before that time, it's good to know what you're up against, and in particular, research the Great Reset, and also do some research on NESARA and GESARA, and you may be pleasantly surprised, and it may just be what you think you need to do as you walk yourself out of this crisis that never seems to end. War, floods, famine, inflation, disease, virus. They said it would be biblical, and biblical it is. This is Jason Olborn reporting for World Series News, and I'll look forward to seeing you on our next show. Thanks for watching.